All right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, as we bring in our dancers to bless this ground, the sacred ground of our power grounds, we ask each and every one of you in your own way that the spirit of our regalias will heal you and take that blessings home. We're glad to have our chief here. He who tries hard is his spirit name. He who tries hard is his spirit name. He got his name from the Tsuut'ina Nation in Alberta. I had to Google it. Nah, I was kidding. Ladies and gentlemen, we ask you to please stand, please rise as we bring in our dancers. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, to honor the sacred day, the special day, we have our traditional dancers, our warriors of long ago, our storytellers from song and dance, to tell that story of how they got here, how we survived, what we went through to be here. We ask you to pay them off with a round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, also we have in our lineup we have our men's prairie chicken. The prairie chicken, the original fancy dance of the prairie. Our prairie chicken dancers. This is the maiden dance for all to welcome you to our territory. We have our grass dancers, original ribbon dance, original fancy dance of the Lakota. Welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, the original fancy feathers. This dance, ladies and gentlemen, the fastest pair of moccasins on earth. We welcome you to our celebration. And we have our fire keepers, our home keepers, our women's traditional. All right behind we have our jingle dress dancers, the healing dance and the women's division. Welcome, welcome. And we have our royalty, ladies and gentlemen, and our fancy shawl, representing all the beautiful, beautiful birds and the butterfly. Welcome to our ceremony. Hookah. Hookah, hookah. Pay them off with a round of applause. We're going to ask you to all just to relax and chill and sit down. We're going to put a show together. This is the fastest powwow show I've ever done in 27 years. We're going to go to the singers to sing 2 starts. I'm going to introduce these dancers. For those of you who don't go to powwows or who doesn't know anything about powwows, you could find this on page 6 on the Google. I was kidding. Anyway, we're going to demonstrate some dances just so that you will understand what we do as Indian people, what we do as the keepers of the land, what we can do to enjoy life. So when we're dancing, we're not dancing for ourselves, we're dancing for the ones that are here and the ones yet unborn, all right? With that, we're going to ask Darwin. Darwin Goodwill comes out of the Dakota Nation of the Standing Buffalo. He's a champion dancer, been to the pay window numerous times, especially the powwows that I've been at, because when he doesn't get on the paper, I just say, Darwin, come on, get it. I know, I was kidding. Darwin is also a song composer, a grass dancer. He comes from a long line of powwow people. Buffalo Lodge. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, the grass dance is the original dance of the Dakota, Lakota, the prairie dance, the ribbon dance, the fancy dance of the prairie. This dance was being traded throughout the nation, throughout tribes. Now you see this dance all over North America, all over the powwow world. They would dance this grass dance, the ribbon dance, the non-buckle dance, mimicking the swing of the grass. This was the first dance before they went into the lodge, the big lodge, the sun dance, the rain dance. They would knock the grass down so the dance can continue. The grass dance. Ladies and gentlemen, put your fried ready hands together and pay them off for a round of applause. That's how I finish as well. Same way. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to bring in our jingle dress dancers. Our jingle dress dancers, ladies and gentlemen, this is the healing dance in our women's division. The healing dance. They always say if you're feeling sore or you're feeling hurt or you're feeling down or something's bothering you or something's bothering your mom, your cushion, your cushy, your grandma, your auntie, or your mom, or your sisters, your brothers, or your aunties, touch that part in your body that will help you heal. This young little girl right here, she is the royalty of our powwow, and Mimi Achukute. She asked me, she said, "Hey, Mr. Good-looking MC man, how do you know my mom is in Vancouver?" I know everything. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to the drum, sing 2 starts of this healing dance. This is a very unique dance. This dance by way of the Ojibwe people. I think you knew that one already. If not, I'm going to tell you that one. It's going to be on my quiz on your way out. I was kidding. Let's go to Buffalo Lodge. Check. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, let's give them a big round of applause. As they're shaking hands here, ladies and gentlemen, I want to explain something to you. And I'm very careful. I do a lot of powwows, and I go from slough to slough, from snowbank to snowbank. In between, there's a powwow, right? And this is a very unique style of dance. This is what we call the maiden dance in our powwow circle. What they're going to do is they're the most colorful. They're the most agile. They will try to ruffle their feathers. What they're trying to do is they're trying to entice the opposite to come into their corner. This is what they're mimicking, that prairie chicken. So all you single ladies, don't look at them in the eyes. You might get pregnant. Hey. Buffalo Lodge. How about paying them off in a round of applause? Man, and that was fancy chicken at its finest. This dance was sponsored to you by KFC. You know, ladies and gentlemen, once again, at any given powwow, this is the highlight of any given powwow right here. This is the fastest pair of moccasins on earth. They will do 101 moves, and that's just on one side. They got to do it on the other side. Same with the women. They're the fancy shawl. They represent the butterfly. They represent the hummingbird. They represent that butterfly that was once in a cocoon, and they're coming out to spread their wings and fly. And they're going to go with a fast and furious song. The fastest song that I made coming here. We're going to go to Buffalo Lodge. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, right there. I haven't moved that fast until I was standing in front of that Jiffy Biffy. And on that secret, we're going to call in our traditional dancers. What we call about the traditional dancers is our storytellers. These individuals, because we don't speak all the same languages in Canada, United States, these dancers will tell their stories when they come back to their camp. They will go out. These are the hunters. These are the gatherers. Remember I was telling you a story about shooting the arrow once? Well, this is the one. These guys would go out into different places, and they will go into different territories. Meaning, how do I tell this story if they don't speak my language? Well, I'm going to tell it through my song. I'm going to tell it through dance. I'm going to tell it through my movement. What I saw, they're going to see some buffaloes. Maybe they'll see some wagon trains. Maybe they'll see a good MC. I don't know. Anyway, now, as these people here are telling their stories, we have a traditional dancer right here. And you'll notice she's a stationary traditional dancer. Now, in our way, they're the fire keepers. They're the ones that stay back. And they're the ones that look after the encampment. And they would stand there waiting for their warriors to come home. And they would lift their fans like that, looking around, waiting for their warriors to come home, to tell that story. That's what she's doing right here. And we'll judge them that way. With that, we're going to go to Buffalo Lodge. How about a big round of applause? Who wants one more? Come back next year. Ladies and gentlemen, as our program continues, we'd like to call up a very young leader who came forward to take this land, to take this band in a direction of positive. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and welcome our local host chief. Ladies and gentlemen, also a chicken dancer extraordinaire, Chief Cadmus Delorme.
Nanaskaman. Tapwe poko mio kisagaw. It's a beautiful day today. Ogamao Cadmus Nitisi Kasu. Nitugama Kaniwin Cowessess is Squingwinik. My name is Chief Cadmus Delorme, and I'm a proud Cowessess citizen. I welcome our guests, Prime Minister Trudeau, Premier Moe, and all friends and family of Cowessess First Nation. At one time, before treaty, our ancestors roamed this land. There was no children in care. There was no unemployment. Everybody had a role. Everybody had a duty, and everybody had a purpose. At the time of treaty, Cowessess First Nation this is what we envisioned was the following. 2 canoes going down the river. The Crown, which today represents our Prime Minister and our Premier, and the Cowessess First Nation canoe, side by side. And we were supposed to flow down this river together, every generation exchanging a child to know the ideology in that canoe and then give those children back, so we always coincided. Unfortunately, today we inherited a history where that didn't happen. In our Cowessess canoe at one time was the Indian Act, which is still here today. At one time, the residential school was put in our canoe. At one time, the 60s scoop was put in our canoe. And our Cowessess citizens fought. Our leaders fought to make sure our kids could still dance today. Today, we all inherited that. Prime Minister Trudeau, Premier Mo, and all their team didn't create this. We all inherited this today. And because of that, we have a little bit of loss of control, a little bit of loss of language, a little bit of loss of governance, a little bit of loss of our social and even our individual lives. One of the major things that happened is what you call vertical lineage pass down. If residential school, 60s scoop, Indian Act weren't here, Kokum would have passed down to mom. Mom would have passed down to daughter. Daughter would have passed down to granddaughter, as it should have been. But because of 4 generations of residential school, it became horizontal. Kokum had to stand beside her cousin to survive. Mom had to stand beside her sister and cousin to survive. And today, that lineage is coming back. That vertical lineage, one day at a time. And we are gaining control. Because of the federal government investing with Cowessess, we now farm our lands again. Because Premier Mo and the government of Saskatchewan worked with Cowessess for renewable energy, we're about to build a 10-megawatt solar field. We got turbines. We are gaining strength one day at a time. But as we move forward, we got a lot of healing to do. I asked 3 friends, family, that are sitting beside us. Rob, give us a wave. Kevin, give us a wave. Nicole, give us a wave. These are proud Cowessess citizens. And at one time, they were in the system. And we didn't find them. Today, they came home. Nicole, Rob, and Kevin, I'm sorry, and you're home now. Today, we give birth to a new horizon. Chief Red Bear Children's Lodge. Today is a historical day because we never gave up our sovereignty to our children. And today, with the Prime Minister of Canada and the Premier of Saskatchewan, we are going to sign a coordination agreement. And what that means is Prime Minister Trudeau stands beside Cowessess and invests in us as we heal at our pace. Premier Mo stands beside us as Cowessess First Nation and invests at our pace as we grow. And the end goal is one day there will be no children in care. I'm 39 years old. I hope that happens in my lifetime. But Cowessess, we have a lot of work to do. And every day we will roll up our sleeves to make sure that every child, when we call them home, that they know where home is, and that is Cowessess First Nation, and that they will dance, they will get their education, and they will walk with their chin up and be a proud Cowessess citizen. Nanaskamun, thank you very much.
Sure. You know, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me the honor and pleasure to introduce also a very young leader, also an individual, no stranger to Canada. His spirit name is one who tries hard. Ladies and gentlemen, let's bring him to the podium. Our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau.
Miigwech, Chief Delorme, for inviting me to your community. Kikinaskamutin. You know, I know there's a lot of people here who've had the privilege of seeing your chicken dance. I wish I had been there. But I know that everybody here is incredibly grateful that you are here, not as a dancer, but as a chief. We are lucky to have you as such a strong chief. Thank you all for your welcome back here to Cowessess. I was here 6 or 7 years ago before I became Prime Minister, and I have wonderful memories of getting to know Cadmus back then and getting to know this community a little bit. So it is truly an honor to be here on this historic moment. I'm very glad we're joined by my friend Premier Mo. It's good to have you here. It's important that we be here as partners. As a country and as a government, we've been reminded over the past few weeks that the path to reconciliation means recognizing past wrongs and working to do better. It is shameful that here in Cowessess and across the country, children died because of the policy of residential schools. Later today, I'll be visiting the site of unmarked graves to pay my respects and sitting down with many of you to hear your stories as survivors. Canada must acknowledge the truth, but we must also understand the truth. Even as Canadians from coast to coast to coast are shaking their heads and feeling guilty and terrible about the shameful past that we are coming to grips with as a nation. It is something that communities like here in Cowessess have known for years, decades, generations. The harm done by residential schools, the broken intergenerational links, the legacy of intergenerational trauma that continues. But even as non-Indigenous Canadians reflect on the history of residential schools, they must also reflect on the fact that at the same time residential schools were teaching Indigenous children that they had no worth, had no value, that their culture had no worth or value, that their languages didn't matter, that their traditions were irrelevant. At the same time as those harmful policies and teachings were inflicted upon generations of proud Indigenous people. In non-residential schools across the country, ordinary schools, so-called, where non-Indigenous Canadians went to, those same messages of the lack of value in Indigenous knowledge, traditions, cultures, language were being spread, were being taught. And as we talk about reconciliation today, it is not just about Indigenous peoples and governments who wronged them, although that's certainly a part of it. It's also about non-Indigenous Canadians understanding that not only what generations of Canadians were taught was wrong, but it was harmful. And it led to the creation of policies and institutions and ways of doing things in this country that didn't respect, acknowledge, or value the extraordinary strength and worth and contributions of Indigenous people, of Indigenous communities, of Indigenous knowledge. So we have not to just fix the wrongs of residential schools and the impacts on your communities, but the work of reconciliation is work that must be joined by all Canadians. Because in all our institutions, in all our ways of doing things, the echoes of those wrong-headed teachings resonate in ways that we are only beginning to come to grips with. And when I see and get to participate in such wonderful moments of community, of celebration, of strength, of culture, of depth, of language, of love, of respect and harmony for nature, these are things that mustn't just be there for strong Indigenous communities. They must be there for all Canadians to draw on. The work of reconciliation won't transform Indigenous communities alone and Indigenous people in Canada alone. The work of reconciliation must and will transform all of Canada and all Canadians. That's the work we have to do together. And of course, as we do that, it needs to start with children. That's the heartbreaking awakening that Canadians have had across the country with the discovery of these graves. That's why we're here today, to do better by this generation and future generations of children and families. Together with Cowessess First Nation and Saskatchewan, the Government of Canada is signing the first ever coordination agreement under the Act, respecting First Nations, Inuit, Métis children, youth, and families. That has been the work of reconciliation that communities like Cowessess has led on over the past many years. That we can come together to sign this today, mere weeks after the tragic discoveries, is because over the past years, leaders like Chief Cadmus and others have stepped up to help us co-create legislation that recognizes that child and family services that take kids from their communities and remove them from their cultures, from their languages, from their land, is not the path forward that we need to walk as a country. And that kids need to be kept by and protected by, supported by, and taught by their communities. So we co-developed legislation called C-92 that will ensure that as we move forward, kids get the support they need and the protection they need, driven by their own communities in their own languages, in their cultures, that no kids finally will be removed from the communities that they are part of. That is the goal, and that is what we are signing the very first agreement all across the country to start today in Cowessess. Never again should kids be taken from their homes, families, and communities. The act we passed in June 2019 makes sure of that. To support this agreement, we're investing $38.7 million for the implementation of the Cowessess First Nation's Child and Family Services System. This is an important step forward. And at the end of the day, it'll mean fewer children and youth in care. And across the country, we are working with other First Nations to reach similar agreements. My commitment is this, that we will continue to work as a partner with all communities on what they need to keep their children safe and thriving. Lorsque les enfants des Premières Nations, des Inuits et des Métis grandissent dans leur communauté, entourés de leur culture et de leurs proches, ils ont de meilleures opportunités de s'épanouir et de réussir. Et je sais, c'est ce que nous voulons tous à travers le Canada pour tous les enfants. Earlier today, Chief Delorme graciously accepted a braid of sweetgrass in order of today's agreement, and as my pledge to work in partnership and unity with all groups to make this goal a reality. We will continue to walk the path of reconciliation and respond to the priorities of Indigenous people on child and family services reform. We will, every step of the way, be there as partners to focus on what's best for your children, for all of our children, because that's what they need and that's what they deserve. Again, thank you, Cadmus, for welcoming me to your community for this really important occasion, not just for Cowessess, but for all of Canada. Miigwech.
Thank you. At this time, we'd like to call up our next speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, he's no stranger to ranching and farming and understanding of the livelihood of Saskatchewan people, especially Saskatchewan First Nation. The farming abilities of our people and understanding of the land. Ladies and gentlemen, let's bring them to the podium with a big round of applause. Our Premier, Scott Moe.
Thank you very much, Howie. I was a little concerned about how that introduction might go while listening to your jokes here earlier today. But, welcome, everyone. Prime Minister, welcome to Saskatchewan, to Cowessess. It's an honor to be with you here today. Cadmus, welcome, and thank you for the passion that you bring to your words here today, but the passion that you bring to the words that you bring to people in this community, in this province, in this nation, each and every day. You're a true leader and a true friend. Thank you, Cadmus, for having us here today. To all the elders that we met with earlier, to all of those honored guests, I have a number of colleagues here today. We have the Honourable Don McMorris, we have Laurie Carr, we have Steve Bonk, who is the MLA for this area. Welcome. Welcome to everyone as we gather in the spirit of reconciliation to celebrate what is truly a historic partnership between three levels of government here at Cowessess. These have not been easy times. The last number of weeks in particular have not been easy times here in Cowessess. They have not been easy times in Saskatchewan or across Canada. I am here and pleased to be part of this agreement today in your community. I'm also here to ensure that this community of Cowessess and other communities across this province know that Saskatchewan people send their love, they send their prayers, and they send their gratitude to everyone in Cowessess And I want you to know that as we walk through the next number of days, weeks, months, years, that we're going to do that together. We as Saskatchewan people will be with you every step of the way, regardless of where that road takes us. Your healing journey is our healing journey as well. As Chief Delorme had so eloquently put it, none of us living here today created the residential school system. None of us created the Indian Act. None of us that are here today. But all of us have a duty as we look forward and look ahead to work together to deal with the consequences of those decisions from generations ago. We have a duty, we have an obligation to build a brighter future for all of us. We can do that, and we can do that together. It's what brings us together here this afternoon. The desire to build a brighter future for this community, maybe not even for us, but for that next generation, for our children and for our grandchildren. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, we're very proud to be a part of this agreement today and the work and the lead up to this agreement here today. It is truly, as the Prime Minister said, a groundbreaking agreement that will give Cowessess control over child and family services that are delivered to your children, delivered to community members, wherever they live. It's an agreement that will ensure that the children of Cowessess are raised by families in their own community, their own culture, in accordance with your own traditions. Today is, yes, the culmination of many months of negotiations by a number of levels of government. Negotiations that were driven by your chief, Chief Cadmus Delorme, who was absolutely determined to see this agreement through here today and to see Cowessess exert its independence in this area. And thank you for your determination, Chief. Prime Minister, I also want to thank you, and I want to thank your colleagues for the passing of Bill C-92, the legislation that opened the door for us to have these negotiations and ultimately have this agreement, this celebration, to proceed forward together here today. Thank you, Prime Minister. I'm also very grateful as well to our provincial colleagues, my provincial colleagues that also worked on this agreement. What started with Paul Merriman, who has now been moved off to brighter pastures in the health portfolio. But to Laurie Carr, who has brought those negotiations together on behalf of the province. Thank you, Laurie, for your hard work and effort. And to all of the provincial officials, federal officials, and those here in Cowessess that worked to ensure that this could happen here today. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been through some trying days, as I mentioned, during the last few weeks. And there are difficult days ahead of us, no doubt, as we continue to deal with the legacy of residential schools in our nation. But today's announcement, I think we would all agree, is a ray of hope. It's a ray of hope for Cowessess, yes. It's a ray of hope for other Indigenous communities in Canada. It's a ray of hope for our province of Saskatchewan. And I would say that it's a ray of hope for our entire nation. And it's no surprise that that hope is originating right here in this community of Cowessess. This is a progressive community. It leads in so many other areas as well. The production of renewable energy, which we mentioned earlier. In farming, now farming 4,500 acres here in Cowessess. In tourism. In education. And now in the delivery of child and family services. Cowessess is most certainly a community that is on the move, working in partnership with the provincial and the federal government. And what's happening here is now has the opportunity to be replicated in other First Nations communities across the nation. Our Indigenous communities are a major tailwind for all of Canada, and they are helping in great ways make our nation strong. So let me close with this. A few years ago, Chief Delorme, he'd said his goal was to be able to look back on his life with pride at the ripe old age of 39 today. I think many of us would agree that we would all like to be in that position. Chief Delorme had set that goal by the time he was old and gray, and at 39 he most certainly is not. But at a time when he'd be old and gray, sitting at home, playing golf with a handicap, and if you've played golf with Chief Delorme, you know that his handicap isn't very high, but when he's old and gray, his handicap would be obviously much higher. He wanted to look back and he wanted to say, you know, our ancestors are very, very proud of what we're achieving here today. Well, I think when you look at what we're achieving at Cowessess, in the community of Cowessess today. I don't think you're going to have to wait for a higher handicap. I don't think you're going to have to wait until you're old and gray. I think that your ancestors are extremely proud of what you have achieved here today, Chief Cadmus Delorme. I think they're proud of the entire community, and I think I can speak on behalf of everyone in this province when we are so very proud of the partnership that we have formulated over the last number of years and with the achievement that we see before us here today. Your ancestors are very proud, Chief, for very good reason.
Let's give them a big round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we're going to ask those ladies to bring those tables to the front. And the historic signing begin. Everything was rehearsed in 5 minutes. And we're good at that. Now that you're on Cowessess land, we don't want you to point like this. You point like that. I'm just teasing. We're going to ask our dancers to stand back here, make a nice big line right back here to signing for our chiefs and our dignitaries to come forward. For those ones that have the cameras, I want you to just stay where you are a little bit, I think, right? And you have the right cameras that are going to take the right pictures. They're just going to stand. They're going to stand. We want all our dancers to stand behind. We have the pen. I always want to say that. All right, we got cameras.
Tom, you're going to do it right.
What a profession. Just looks that, takes that pause.
Now, we have our gift exchange. We're going to have our gift exchange. You know, ladies and gentlemen, this gift exchange goes way back to the beginning of time. When the visitors first came, we gifted them with survival gifts. And that gift giving still goes on with different tribes and nations. And the Cowessess First Nation would like to present their visitors with gifts. I'm going to turn this microphone over to Chief if you want to say a few words.
Thank you, Howie. Thank you again, everybody. I want to start off with Premier Mo. Premier Mo, this was done by one of our most respected members in this community. We know him as the Sheriff, but we also know him as Malcolm Delorme. When our warriors go into battle, they have their warrior stick. And our battle together continues. We will get to our destination one day at a time. I also offer this. Every child at some point in their life should get a teddy bear. It's comfort. It's love. All of our teddy bears for our children will have a ribbon skirt or ribbon shirt on to remember who we are and where we come from. Thank you very much, Premier. Prime Minister Trudeau, your visit here today and the recent events is very uplifting. And I offer you this, a warrior stick with a dream catcher, that as we continue to be dreamers and believers on Cowessess, that you stand beside us and help us also get there one day at a time. You like that, eh? Yeah. I coordinated that one. I tried to get a green one, Premier, but we couldn't turn it around that fast. Prime Minister, I give you the same photo, that you hang it up somewhere, I hope, in offices that you attend daily, weekly, and that you look at them. And there are many other children out there that are waiting for many First Nations. And this picture is from us to you, that we're very grateful for what you have done with us. Nanaskaman, thank you. Who's next? Did you want to speak to them? Yeah.
Chief Delorme, Cadmus. This was made by a very prominent artist, and I don't have his name with me, but I believe he's known by all of you. The orange hands, the buffalo, the dream capture, all this to indicate our thankfulness to you and this momentous occasion of us coming together to begin a new chapter in our partnership. Thank you. Premier Mo, Scott, it's a pleasure to present this as well. The orange for the residential schools, the buffalo, signs of strength, and the partnership that we have, federal and provincial governments, to continue to work and walk the right path of reconciliation together. Thank you.
Thank you very much to both the Prime Minister and Chief Delorme. Chief Delorme, there's an artist in Prince Albert, up in my neck of the woods, Treaty 6 territory. Gail Carlson is her name, and she's also done a sculpture on a portrait of the buffalo as well, which is also very symbolic of strength and symbolic of the land that we know here in Saskatchewan. So Gail Carlson is, as I said, up from my area of the province, just in Prince Albert, and we offer you this as a memento and a memory of the great day that we had here today. And likewise, Prime Minister, a memento from Gail Carlson in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, a memento of the wonderful day here today. And thank you so very much for being here. And thank you very much to the federal government and yourself for the effort to get here. The perseverance was from the Chief, Cadmus Delorme, to see this through. But it didn't happen without the effort from the federal government. And thank you so very much for that. You know, if there's a positive out of COVID, it's the fact that we have been on the telephone weekly, bi-weekly, throughout the course of the last year. All of the premiers and the Prime Minister himself has made himself available. And there's relationships that have formed there between provincial and federal governments. And I can't help but that relationship likely helps when we come to work with communities across this nation, most notably in Cowessess here today. So thank you, Prime Minister, for being here today.
Check that table, see if there's anything for me. Holy cow. I don't know where that came from, Chief. I'm just... Yeah, there's some kindling. Hey, take a picture of this. There you go. I got some fire sticks happening. Thank you. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, the gift giving and all that, we'd like to also call our Youth Council, Mia Buckles.
Oh, my stick.
I might steal it on you. Hello, everybody. I want to move this down a little bit, sorry. Okay, hello everybody. My name is Mia Buckles. I am the chair of the Cowessess First Nation's Youth Council. A big welcome to our guests and thank you for being here. I just wanted to say a quick thank you for the opportunity to represent and speak for our youth. Now, I'm going to be completely transparent for a moment and say that I think a lot about my people and the horrors that we've endured for decades, centuries even. All the hurt, fear, and guilt that we feel and conceal from those around us, the effects these hardships have had on our ancestors and our present generations are undeniable and indescribable. In Saskatchewan, 86% of children in care identify as First Nations. 86%. 150 of those children are from Cowessess, and it's their time to receive the opportunity to come home and heal with their families on their own land through a holistic approach. Cowessess is taking on a huge leadership role for our First Nations communities throughout Canada in the walk to lowering these numbers, which also plays a role in lowering incarceration numbers in First Nations. Intergenerational trauma is very real. I recognize it in my life and others' lives around me. It plays a huge role into why so many of our people end up in foster care, incarcerated, addicted, and uneducated. This is a beautiful new pathway opening to our children and their families. Our nation has worked extremely hard to create our own family and child services system and to obtain jurisdiction over the care of our children and families. I am so proud to say that I am from Cowessess First Nation today. After years of our children being taken and separated from their families, from their families, culture, and ultimately their senses of self, we are one step closer to breaking one of the many generational curses that bind us. With the start of our family and child services system, our children and families affected by intergenerational trauma and other struggles will have the opportunity to heal in every aspect, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. I personally have a large disconnect from my culture. I found it really affected my sense of self. I do not know my language. I have minimum knowledge on ceremonies, our stories, and our way of life. Chief Red Bear Children's Lodge will work proactively to prevent children and families from going into care. They will be provided safe living and access to their culture. This is a huge first step that will lead the Indigenous people of Canada into a brighter future. Teaching our people our culture and what it truly means to be Indigenous, not the statistics, not the stereotypes, but us, a beautiful and powerful nation, who we always have been and always will be. We are the leaders in a long-fought battle for the rights and the comforts of our people. Soon after us, I hope other First Nations communities will follow in our footsteps and fight to gain the ability to care for and assist their families and children in need to a healthy and happy life. And to conclude, I just want to remind our beautiful people that we are strong, we are resilient. Our people may have been silenced, pushed to the side, and buried, but we will always come back stronger and louder than ever before. And with that, a big congratulations to Cowessess First Nation. We've earned it. Thank you, everybody.
That concludes my part. We're going to ask Buffalo Lodge to sing a victory song. We have songs. One's the honor song. One's a victory song. Today is a great victory, and I'll talk about that. Chief, can I talk about that Eagle staff? That Eagle staff. It was told to me. I travel around different powwows, different communities, and I'm an Assiniboine, so I want to know things so I can tell other people. I asked about that Eagle staff, that curved stick, this one here. If you acknowledge this curved stick right here, oh, I hate to use this honor stick. You notice it's curved. Well, this Eagle staff used to lead us into battle. This one used to say, it's a good day today. But since working closely with the treaties and the government, all tribes throughout Canada, United States, they bent that lance, that spear. We will fight no more. That's what they told me. At the Battle of Little Bighorn, I went with tobacco to learn the meaning of it, because we see it all over. But I want to know. But I want to educate people. I want to tell you. We're working together with this spear. It used to be a spear, but we bent it. We're not going to fight no more. We want to work together. Story of the Eagle staff. With that, we're going to go to Buffalo Lodge for the victory song. We're going to ask you to please stand, please rise, and come and dance for a victory. It's our time. Saskatchewan, Canada, United States, we will stand together and work together.
Hello all. I have a question to ask of all three of you. To start with Chief Delorme, when you put out the advisory yesterday saying that we were going to have this signing ceremony, you put this into the context of a larger push for self-government. And I'm wondering what comes next. What is the next jurisdiction that you're seeking to see transferred from other levels of government? And to the two other leaders, how do you foresee that developing? Do you foresee something else like Bill C-92, allowing the transfer of other areas of provincial and federal jurisdiction?
Nanaskaman, thank you for the question. Today, we focused on one of our main assets in our nation and our people and our children. Now that today is celebrated, tomorrow our hard work continues. We will meet as a nation. The Indian Act is there and it's real. The Indian Act can't be abolished tomorrow. It has to be at a nation's pace to remove themselves from the Indian Act into true self-government and nation to nation. We are now talking about lands and how do we exit out of Section 21 to 28 of the Indian Act. We're talking about membership. How do we exit out of Section 10 and 11 of the Indian Act? So tomorrow we'll go to the drawing table. We'll roll up our sleeves. We'll do a lot of hard work. And hopefully in months and years, we'll all be standing here again celebrating another great achievement towards self-government and nation-to-nation relationship. Thank you.
I just entirely agree, obviously, with Chief Delorme's approach on that. We are there as a government, as a federal government, to be a partner at their pace on their priorities. Indigenous communities across the country talked about how important it was to get the kids out of care, keep them in the communities. That's why we moved forward with Bill C-92. Bill C-91 was about lifting up, protecting Indigenous languages, because we know that language and culture and identity all go together in terms of support and building a strong future for a community and strong kids. But as Cadmus said, the Indian Act, we need to move beyond it. We need to get out from under the Indian Act. That's not something that can take a week. It's something that we will do, as we have been doing with communities across the country, at their pace. What is a priority for which community? Some want to move forward on school boards quicker. Some want to move forward with healthcare systems and businesses. There is a huge range of priorities, and the pace at which we move will be dictated by the desire and the leadership of the communities we work with. The role of the federal government is not to dictate or to give solutions. It's there to accompany in building the solutions that come from the communities, and that's what we will continue to walk along on the path with Chief Delorme and leaders across the country.
So I would just add to Chief Delorme's, you're taking your honor stick. I'd add to Chief Delorme's and the Prime Minister's comments with respect to, yes, what today is doing is celebrating, moving forward in really, providing that greater opportunity for that next generation, for the kids of Cowessess, really putting forward a plan, I think, that will be able to be replicated across this province and across the nation. And that's an important day for us to celebrate. Chief Delorme has said there's a few other areas that they would like to look at. They referenced earlier that Cowessess is now in the agricultural business, farming about 4,500 acres this year, which I think really speaks to the other opportunities that lie before us in our Indigenous communities, but in our province and in our nation. And I think it's important for us to also recognize what has already occurred in the path of and the spirit of reconciliation, but on the economic side of our province. And I would point to the strongest gaming agreement between any provincial government and Indigenous communities is right here in Saskatchewan, with the gaming agreement that we have, the gaming framework agreement that we have with our tribal councils and with the FSIN. When you go up into my area of the province, there are some tremendous tremendously strong economic agreements around the forestry industry and the timber industry, where we now have, and we showed the premiers a couple of years ago when they were here on the Council of Federation visit, what we are doing is in Indigenous communities along the forest fringe, taking those profits from the forest industry that are from an agreement between the province and the communities along the forest fringe, taking those profits and reinvesting those right back into the community, into education centres at Big River First Nation, at Cowessess First Nation, at Muskeg Lake now. And so there has been some of this path is starting to be traveled, and we must recognize that we are traveling that path together. But as Chief Delorme said, there's more to do. There's more for all of us to do as we look ahead to the next number of months and years. Today, we are working on the Child and Family Services, which is integral to the strength of our communities. But it's also important for us as we look forward to continue to focus as well on the economic reconciliation and the economic opportunities that we have in this province. And yes, they do, and they will continue to include our Indigenous communities and our Indigenous people. They need to.
Chief Cadmus, thank you for having us here today. My name is Mickey. I'm with CBC. And to you, Prime Minister, can you please answer in both French and English? So my question is, what does this achievement mean, and how will both levels of government expand? What happened here to continue to dismantle systemic racism in all of our institutions, not just social services?
Thank you. First of all, this is a step along the journey, but it's one that was identified by Indigenous communities, I think quite rightly, as being a priority. Making sure that we recognize, if we're recognizing as we are, the harms done to children in residential schools, the harms done to children through Child and Family Service removals of Indigenous kids who are overrepresented in care in the Canadian population, and give the present and the future of those kids back to their communities. So this was the thing that we've worked on over the past years and are happy to move forward on. But it's also an example of the path we can take. And as we have been doing this, we've been working together on agreements around medical services and supports, on education and schools, on investing in things like clean drinking water and all the things that are important pieces coming together. So we will continue to work on that, and on Indigenous procurement and Indigenous entrepreneurship and business opportunities, as Scott talked about. There are so many things that we need to do together at the same time. The sequencing will be determined in partnership, but this is a long path to walk. And over the past 5 years, we have done many things, and the ability to make this announcement today is proof that we didn't just wake up a few weeks ago and said, oh, we should really try and do something for Cowessess because of the tragedy and what we've seen. It's just, no, we've been working with Cadmus for years now, with Indigenous leadership for years, on the hard work of reconciliation so that we can stand here today. And it's an important thing, but there are many more important things to do, and that is what we will continue to work on. Ce qu'on est en train de reconnaître aujourd'hui, c'est que le travail se fait continuellement. Ça fait des années qu'on travaille vers cette entente aujourd'hui, qui tombe très bien, qui souligne l'importance de nos enfants à un moment où on est en train de réfléchir à tous ces enfants perdus dans les pensionnats autochtones. Mais ce travail se fait jour et nuit par des gens extraordinaires à tous les différents paliers de gouvernement et chez nos partenaires autochtones pour arriver. Il y a bien d'autres choses à faire. Mais nous allons continuer notre travail parce que c'est pas facile, c'est pas immédiat, c'est pas rapide. Mais ce qu'on fait va durer. Et c'est ça qui compte le plus.
Yeah, I would just very quickly add to what the Prime Minister said, and I know Chief Delorme will add more as well. But the path to reconciliation is a path that we do need to travel together, and it's a path that we continue to take steps on. And I mentioned a couple in my previous answer, but I would also mention that Saskatchewan, in our public school system, in all of our school system across the province, was the first province to move forward with infusing K-12 treaty education in our community. So the governments have a role to play in ensuring that those types of steps are moving forward. Today is a step forward. Today, most certainly, is a step forward. This past couple of weeks, as painful as it has been with the, I won't say the discovery, but the recognition and finding of unmarked graves in various communities in our province, and more to come, I'm sure, in the weeks ahead, as actually identified in the Truth and Reconciliations Commission's report, and their calls to action is to find these unmarked graves and to identify who is in these graves so that those families can start down the path of closure. And so that, again, is another step, as painful as it is, as another step for all of us to wander down the path of reconciliation. And I would just close that governments, yes, do have a responsibility. And you're seeing 3 levels of government here today moving forward with a step in exercising our responsibility. But I would just add to that each of us as individuals in this province, whether we're Indigenous or otherwise in this nation, we also have a responsibility, and it is just as simple as treating one another with the same respect that we want to be treated in return. If we remember that as individuals, and put that responsibility on each of us as individuals, this community, this province, this nation will be better in the days ahead. To Chief Delorme's comments, none of us here created the Indian Act, move forward with the residential schools. What matters is the decisions that we make today as governments, and the decisions, I say, just as important, likely more important, are that we make as individuals in this province, in this nation.
Nanaskamun on the question. This is a prime example. I know we have many Team Saskatchewan, Team Canada, and Team Cowessess that were a part of these weekly discussions. Cowessess chaired every meeting. Cowessess led every discussion. And it wasn't paternalistic. We always reminded each other that this is Cowessess's coordination agreement, and that the province and that this country stand beside our coordination agreement. Our preamble in our coordination agreement is not a therefore be it resolved. It is a prayer, because that is the Cowessess approach. Our act is called the Mio Pimatisawin Act, which means striving for a better life in our sovereign language. Secondly, in order to decolonize legislation today and moving forward, number one is First Nations, we are rights holders. We're not shareholders, we're not stakeholders, we're rights holders, which are inherent to us and our children yet unborn. And thirdly, this country has many legislations, some work, some the machine is so big you can't change it. And so this is where Indigenous people, as rights holders, can create their own laws in a true co-relationship as treaty was meant to be. And Section 35 is there so that the Westminster system, the province, the parliament, the provincial legislation will respect and work with our laws as we move forward. That is how you address what some people call systematic racism, is you either work with what we got or we start working to create laws where we can all move forward together.
This question is for Chief Delorme. I'm just wondering what you're thinking, what you're feeling today, signing this achievement, a first in Canada, but just a few weeks ago you announced the discovery of the graves, and with the legacy of residential schools so fresh in many people's minds.
Nanaskamun on the question. A few weeks ago we had to tell a story, a finding, a realization. And colonization is really tough within Cowessess. I'm not going to try sugarcoat it. And when we told the world what was discovered, it created a little bit of animosity in our own community of how these graves came to where they are. And as the chief, I can't be biased. I got to listen to our Roman Catholic faith Cowessess citizens. I got to listen to our citizens that have persevered. I had to listen to our citizens that have intergenerational trauma and are just looking for that little bit of motivation to get past that. And so the past 2 weeks were really tough for Cowessess First Nation. This coordination agreement is hope. This coordination agreement focuses on our children. This coordination agreement focuses on those kids right now that are in care, that they think they're from Cowessess, but they don't know what that means. And today, every one of our children that are in care, every one of our homes that need prevention investment right now, will pick up a phone and we can respond so fast. And it won't be magic, but we will respond in a way that is proactive, that is empowering, and that is what today was so significant about. Pain is going to continue today and tomorrow, but it's moments like this that are going to make sure that our motivation comes from our hope and our dreaming, and that's how I feel today. And today I feel very uplifted in the future of Cowessess First Nation.
Prime Minister Trudeau, it's Jill from CTV National News. The critics are saying, while you're affirming First Nations jurisdiction today over the Child Welfare Authority, you've also been fighting, your government's been fighting equitable funding for First Nations children in court. So how do you reconcile the two?
This is part of the path forward. Recognizing that removing kids from their communities creates harm in those communities, not just in the moment, but a legacy that lasts. That's where residential schools were wrong. And that's why we recognize that kids in child and family services over the past years were wronged and deserve compensation. We've been absolutely clear about that since even before the Human Rights Tribunal came forward on that. The issue that is under discussion right now is what is the right level to compensate. The CHRT gave the same amount to everyone, whether they spent 1 day in a day school or in care, or 10 years in care. I think a lot of people recognize that maybe not exactly the right way to divide things. So we're working closely with partners. We're working with Indigenous leadership. We're working with community leaders to try and figure out not whether to compensate. That is clear. We have made that commitment. We will be compensating. But what is the right level? What is the way to move forward so that individuals and communities are properly supported moving forward? That's where the conversations are being had right now. So critics can render this a simplistic bumper sticker attack. We're going to stay focused on doing the real work of healing and of partnership on this journey that gets kids back into their communities, back into their culture, back into their language, and gives them the support they need to pass on positive legacies to future generations, not trauma. Because we've had enough of that in Canada, and we need to move forward. And that's what today is about, and that's what every day is about when we walk the road of reconciliation together. Merci.
Thank you, and that concludes all the time we have.